Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. Double honors, the hails and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth to sincerity. And shout out to the Akims out there in the four quarters of the earth proclaim this truth. Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Barakatum. Perilous times coming. The love of many growing colder as this video goes into from another brother, and just going to let it play in its entirety. Shalom.
About 5:55 a.m. on Sunday morning, Freeport Police received the first call regarding a disturbance at a residence in the 300 block of West 79th Street. The caller stated that they were on top of a house. The suspect was inside and that a male had been shot. 3 minutes later, at 5:58, dispatch received an additional call indicating the suspect was a relative of the caller. A minute later, 5:59 a.m., dispatch was advised that approximately 9 individuals resided at the location. The caller further stated that the suspect, identified as Shamar Elkins, had shot everyone inside the home. At 6 o'clock a.m., 1 minute later, the caller advised that she and her children had fled from the roof and were now in the backyard. 6:01 a.m., officers arrived on the scene. 6:03, officers made contact with the caller at the residence. At 6:05 approximately, officers requested the Freeport Fire Department to stage at a nearby location close to Linwood. 6:07 a.m., a second call was received regarding a shooting in the 500 block of Harrison Street. The caller stated that her boyfriend had shot her, taken her 3 children, and fled the scene. 6:08 a.m., the victim identified the suspect as Shamar Elkins. At 6:10, dispatch linked the Harrison Street shooting with the shooting on West 79th Street, and that they all were related. At 6:15, officers received information that the suspect had carjacked a red Kia Sportage at West 79th, closest to Linwood. At 6:17 a.m., our traffic units out on random patrol encountered or observed that particular vehicle traveling southbound on Interstate 49. The officers advised at 6:18 that they were crossing the Red River Bridge into Bossier City. At 6:20, officers received information that the children taken from the Harrison Street residence may be inside of the fleeing vehicle. 6:23 a.m., officers advised that they were exiting near Swan Lake area. 6:25 a.m. approximately, officers located the injured victims from the Harrison Street shooting. 6:29 a.m., officers made contact with the suspect through an exchange of gunfire. At 6:30 a.m., officers confirmed contact with the suspect in the 400 block of Brompton Lane. 6:40 a.m., officers advised that the suspect vehicle was empty and no children were located inside. 6:43 a.m., officers cleared the residence of West 79th Street where multiple deceased victims were located. 7:03 a.m., Shamar Elkins was pronounced deceased at the scene on Brompton Lane. 7:14 a.m., the Freeport Police Department contacted the Louisiana State Police Investigative Division, and they began their deployment to the Bossier City address to begin to investigate the officer-involved shooting.
This right here is totally sad. Down in Shreveport, Louisiana, there was an unaliving. The suspect ended up unaliving his own children. Now, this happened on West 79th Street. And they said it happened around 6 a.m. this morning, April the 19th. And all the victims, they range in age from 1 to 14 years old. Now, it said that it's a total of 10 people who were shot. The only survivors were 2 adult women, one suffering from life-threatening injuries. And one of the women is believed to be some kind of relationship with the suspect. Well, I'm finding out that it's his wife. And his name is Shamar Elkins. And he shot her in the head. Now, his wife's name is Shaniqua Elkins. She's still right now in the hospital with life-threatening injuries. These right here is children. And I saw online where he had just posted, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, where he took his oldest out to get something to eat. The police right now are still gathering details about this whole thing, and they said it extends across 4 locations. And those 4 locations include 2 homes in which the GSW victims were found, the scene of the carjacking, and the scene where the suspect was unalived by the police in Boucher City. He took them on a car chase, and then they ended up in Boucher, ended up unaliving him on the 400 block of Brampton Lane. This is totally tragic. I mean, what made him snap? One minute he's spending time with his oldest and loving on his kids and stuff, and the next minute he done took out a whole bunch of lives. But to hurt your own children, that is pure evil. I'll bring you guys more as soon as I find out more. Right now, the police are asking, the state police, they're asking that anybody that has any kind of pictures or videos or any kind of other information to share it with them. Y'all lift up this family. This is just totally heartbreaking. These are times of distress.
So, like everything else, though, we told you that these times were coming. You know? Time and time again. Now I'm going to play from this brother's video. I'm going to blow it up.
I'd like to give all honor, glory, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rukakadash. I'd like to give the honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Salutations to our sister Akim, Christians right across the 4 corners of the world. And as you just saw from this opening video, based in Shreveport, Louisiana, over this past weekend, and we had a Jake that carried out a vicious attack on his family, and he took the lives of his 7 children. And also his sister-in-law's child, which was 8, of course, ranging from ages 18 months to 14 years old. And he also shot his wife that he has a few children with, and her sister, and also his other children's mother as well. You know, just went on a straight rampage. We're going to find out he's an ex-military veteran, and different sources stated that he was suffering from a lot of PTSD. His parents stated that he told them on Easter Sunday that his wife filed a divorce on him. And his family stated that he was battling a lot of personal demons. And we are within the midst of this world going through constant stimulation, rising stress, just global chaos, and just having that spiritual ability to remain calm. That's a secret weapon within itself. And more so, it's a superpower, especially within the dreadful times to come. So if people are snapping out right now in this day of time, which will be considered as the cool of the day, then how much more would all hell really breaks loose within this American society? Like, people are already at their wits' end now. So how much more that vibration is going to be amplified within that day? And that takes me to 2 Ezra 8 verse 50. For many great miseries should be done to them that in the latter time should dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride. So those miseries goes into great tribulation, anguish, desolation, suffering, and also distresses. And Yahushua prophesied within Luke, the 21st chapter, how we were going to witness within these latter times distress upon the nations, with perplexity, which goes into uncertainty, because a lot of people cannot spiritually pinpoint on why these catastrophic events are occurring around the world, which links up with the volume of the book, aka the Holy Bible. And pursuant to Ezekiel, the 2nd chapter, it stated how there was a roll of a book written within and without, and what was written within it: lamentation, mourning, and woe, which highlights the troublesome times that we are currently in. And again, it's going to be more intensified in the dreadful times to come. Alright, so again, for many great miseries or sufferings should be done to them that in the latter time should dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride. And these times of great distress, anguish, desolation, sufferings, and tribulations are being brought to you by the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, through his only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. Just like how they brought evil, which goes into bad times, throughout this city Shreveport over this past weekend. And that takes me to Amos, the 3rd chapter, and 6th verse, within the GNT, which is the Good News translation. And it says, "Does the war trumpet sound in a city without making the people afraid? Does disaster strike a city unless the Lord Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai sends it?" And these divine plagues, which goes into widespread afflictions that can be seen as divine retribution, are being carried out by Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, via the angels. And pursuant to the scripture right here, this is why you're seeing on different online sources regarding this topic, a sad day in Shreveport. Let's get right quick. Isaiah 19 verse 14. "The Lord Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, have mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof." And that perverseness goes into something that is contrary unto that true standard of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Hence, lawlessness, wickedness, pride, or the love of many waxing cold. And for the ones of us who have that spiritual eye salve, we are witnessing how Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, is placing a reprobate spirit upon these individuals, to the point where these people do not have conflict resolution skills, very emotional, especially these so-called men that are running out their wits for these women, and where they are more inclined to tap into their carnal nature and not just having the ability to remain calm and walk away, and just making emotional and irrational decisions. And there was a spirit of vengeance upon this vessel, of this Jake named Shamar Elkins, and for him to carry out this massacre upon his family. So again, the Lord Yahweh Bahasham Yahushua have mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. And everything is off course within its rightful balance in this American society. That's why America is known as Babylon the Great, and also spiritual Egypt. And we are realizing more and more how Yahweh Bahasham Yahushua is plaguing these inhabitants of America, especially if they're not plugged into that righteous vibration of Yahweh Bahasham Yahushua, which means that these people are opened up into these left-handed elements where they're vulnerable at all times. And that's because they are not defended by not having that righteous pavilion or shelter or refuge over them, and where we as the Israelites are definitely in need of, especially within the troublesome times to come, hence the times of Jacob's trouble. And this is Matthew 24, verses 12 to 13, within the NLT, the New Living Translation, and it says, sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. And when you read the same verse within the KJV version, and for the word cold, it goes into sukkos. And that's where you get the word psychotic from, which explains why more of these people within this world, especially here within America, the sinful kingdom, are more tapped in on their left-handed side, and more opened up into these left-handed enchantments or sorceries, more mentally deranged, like this guy, Shamar Elkins, where these different sources stated that he was going through a lot of PTSD. You never know, Jay might have been jabbed up as well, and that alone has opened up another can of worms. And this experimental device, the jab, and again, I'm not sure he did get it or not, but he was a part of the military, but at the same time, I'm still not sure. It's causing a shift in these people, and to the point where a lot of people are not tapped into reality anymore. Like a lot of people are losing it nowadays, straight snapping out. And again, this is all within the cool of the day, the calm before the storm. So how much more again when Jacob's trouble be fully implemented throughout the various cities and states of America? It's going to be a war zone out here, and we are seen to be more amplified right now, where that spirit of pride, selfness, wickedness, lawlessness is just being more and more intensified as each day goes by. So again, sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And that's the legacy of the elect of the nation of Israel, or can be interchangeable with the Israel of the Most High. And let's close off with Jeremiah chapter 9, verses 19 to 21. For a voice of wailing is heard out of Zion, and that's referencing to you biblical Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Hispanics, and Native Americans. And also for the ones of our people that might look like these other nations, but on your father's side, it registers back into a so-called Negro, Latino, Hispanic, or Native American. So again, for a voice of wailing is heard out of Zion. And again, when you read Ezekiel, the 2nd chapter, it goes into about that roll of a book. Again, referring to the Holy Bible or the volume of the book and what was written within. Lamentation, mourning, and woe. You watch these different news coverages of Jay getting murked or unalive, or it might be a child or Eve or something like that. And when you would see the female family members of that particular individual, then they would be letting out that passionate expression of grief, sorrow, that bitter cry. Hence that wailing. So again, for a voice of wailing is heard out of Zion. How are we spoiled? We are greatly confounded because we are forsaken the land, because our dwellings have cast us out. And that's due to our disobedience. Yet hear the word of the Lord, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahushua, O ye women, and let your ear receive the word of his mouth, and teach your daughters wailing, and every one her neighbor lamentation. And more of these emotional jakes are straight crashing out with Eve nowadays, to the point where you see categories on YouTube called Black Femicide. And you will see news coverages of random Eve just straight getting murdered, getting unalive at great measures. And to these emotional jakes, it doesn't matter how these Eves look. So therefore that pretty privilege, it holds no weight nowadays. Verse 21, for death is come up into our windows and is entered into our palaces. And just based off this massacre that took place in Shreveport, Louisiana on this past weekend, it was like 2 or maybe 3 children tried to escape this domestic shooting that was going on. They tried to escape by leaving out the window. And I believe like 1 or maybe 2 got away, and Jake unalived one of his children on the rooftop. So again, for death is come up into our windows and is entered into our palaces to cut off the children from without and the young men from the streets. Pursuant to Isaiah 3:25, how thy men should fall by the sword, and thou mighty in the war, which explains your so-called black on black crime, or your black on brown crime, or your brown on brown crime, or your brown on black crime, which is all part of the legacy of the 2/3 getting cut off within this land, America, Babylon the Great. And pursuant to Wisdom of Solomon 3 verse 19, for horrible is the end of the unrighteous generation. So that concludes the lesson right there through the Spirit, and hopefully with that, you all stay edified, you all stay strong, keep pushing forward. Shalom.
And it kind of reminds me of that old song from Eminem, which Eminem is a Jake, even though he has the appearance of an Edomite, he definitely is a Jake. But he wrote the song Kim. So long, bitch, you did me so wrong. I don't want to go on living in this world without you. And then it happened even with the wrestler Chris Benoit when he took out his entire family and himself, and they were all unalived, and like everything else, though, people just losing it. But it's going to get worse and worse, as we get closer to the very end. The love of many shall wax cold, which we now know that psychotic, man, they can't live without, because that's what we're taught, is that, once your bitch leaves you, and you won't look at him as just another bitch, but once she leaves you, you got nothing to live for. I mean, that's the mentality, that you got nothing left to live for, when it really should have been the opposite. But that's how codependent we men have become, and the women are supposed to be codependent upon us. But you see how that script's been flipped? Well, that's because everything's been turned upside down, with Esau ruling. That's what happens when you turn everything upside down. So, it brings me to this. White House enters total panic mode over the disastrous handling of the Iran war that has already triggered global financial meltdown and endangered Republican control of the Senate, which, like everything else, they're giving you the illusion of voting and all that bullshit, but like everything else, there is a meltdown going on. It's because they're doing it on purpose. They're crashing the system on purpose, and everybody's losing it over this. Plus, nuclear armed Pakistan calls for Israeli immediate, full, and unconditional withdrawal from all occupied Lebanese territories. Because like everything else, though, Pakistan already said that, if any weapons would be used against Iran, nuclear weapons, that Pakistan won't be afraid to take them out, that they would take out Tel Aviv, as well as China and Russia saying that. So, like everything else, though, we know who starts World War III. We know it's the least of the flock, So, like everything else, White House enters total panic mode over the disastrous handling of the Iran war that already triggered global financial meltdown. So, here's some of what he had here.
That Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, and they've agreed to that. Iran's agreed to that, and they've agreed to it very powerfully. They've agreed to give us back the nuclear dust that's way underground.
Yeah, that's what he's telling everybody, delusional.
So we have a lot of agreement with Iran, and I think something's going to happen very positive.
Now, Pakistan is a nuclear power. They've been brokering the talks. They're pointing out that Israel continues to break the ceasefires. Here's the Pakistan ministry demands Israel withdrawal from all occupied territories. Don't forget, they're actually a nuclear power and have a lot of high-tech missiles and reportedly hundreds of bombs. Here's some of what the Pakistanis had to say.
Call for Israel's immediate, full, and unconditional withdrawal from all occupied Lebanese territories. Sustainable calm requires the full implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701.
Remember, they're Elam
and
too.
Unwavering respect for Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity along the Blue Line.
And then we have a contingent of what you call more modern neocon MAGA, Trump's former enemies, literally coming out and saying those of us that are trying to get Trump to stop these disastrous policies for the economy and world peace and for the midterms, we're the traitors. And I see this sophomoric thing constantly where they go, oh, you're kicked off the Trump train. Trump fired you. Ha, you're not in the cool club anymore. What does that even mean? I like Trump because he was better than Democrats. Could care less about Trump liking me or being in some cool club where everything he does is pure genius. We're all supposed to worship it and act like sycophantic idiots. I mean, that's how the Democrats would act when they would say that Joe Biden's, this is the best Joe Biden. He's as smart as he's ever been. He's a total genius. Two men can have a baby. All of this cult-like garbage is the reason I've hated the Democrats so much. But here's the good news, and it's the bad news. Very paradoxical. 80+%, and that's Rasmussen and other various independent polls, of independents that voted Republican are now voting Democrat or for another party. Trump swept independents. Under 45 men, he's lost over 40% of them. Unprecedented. Trump's overall approval rating of how he's handling things, 33, the lowest ever, down from 56. So The good news is it's a minority of Republicans that actually buy this garbage and love Mark Levin being the shadow president, and the real president being Benjamin Netanyahu, and the press secretary being Ben Shapiro. But paradoxically, okay, good, Republicans aren't in a cult. We don't follow leadership when it's doing bad things. We have moral integrity. We supported Trump because he was the vessel that was doing what he was supposed to. A tool. But paradoxically, the fact that it is so unpopular, that's why they're going to lose the midterms. And it's self-inflicted wound. Trump cannot be this stupid. They've been telling him for months this is happening, and he just doesn't care and tells them to shut up. I want to talk about other things.
So, like everything else, so yeah, you could say that he committed political suicide, but he also just doesn't give a fuck because, it doesn't even matter about elections. He's going to do what he wants to do anyways. He's locked in for the next 4 years. This thing will be over before those 4 years are up. I should say next 3 years, because technically, his term is supposed to end in 2028, right? But, hey, under war, you can be president for life. Yes, sir. That's what's happened with, Ukraine's leader. So Trump is definitely taking some notes there. And like everything else, we said lockdowns would be coming. Well, energy lockdowns, which has been talked about a lot. Well, it's happening all over Europe. Ursula says, King Ursula, or Queen Ursula, whatever you want to call it, but that's, World Economic Forum telling you, energy lockdowns. But here we go, a new set of lockdowns. Stay home, save lives, right? Work from home day. Offices closed. Very similar parallels, right?
Europe is set to begin energy lockdowns in the next few weeks. A few weeks ago, Russia actually predicted this. They said that Europe was about to impose these restrictions, and now here we are. According to multiple
energy
reports,
crisis.
Financial Times, Brussels pushes
all done on
remote working
purpose
to ease energy crisis. Sounds fun, and they put a cat in the photo. Like, you'll be home with your cats, no big deal. A big fluffy
Look
cat.
how happy she is there.
She's so happy to be with her cat.
Does she have a warm beverage too?
She's got a nice little plant.
Oh man, I want to work there too.
Yeah,
I want to work there too.
Now all you need is like a puppy or like a nice warm bed. So the EU is pushing remote work now to tackle energy crisis. Brussels wants to start by introducing one mandatory workday from home per week as these energy prices continue and keep rising. Ursula von der Leyen just a few days ago already was laying the groundwork for this. Listen.
Is how can we reduce the demand? Because of course the least expensive energy is the energy that is not used. We should reduce demand while...
Yeah, we should reduce demand. Of course, Jim Ferguson joins us now from the UK. He has been watching this very, very closely. Jim, of course, is the founder of Freedom Train International and one of the keenest observers of this globalist tyranny that's unfolding. Jim, great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks a lot, Clayton. It's always good to be on with you and Natalie. It's a pleasure to be here.
A pleasure. Well, you might, next time we see you, have to be working from home, so we wouldn't have a chance to have you in a studio because of these new laws. But, I think any idiot could have looked at this and seen that this was going to come from the EU, from Europe, that these energy restrictions were going to start flowing, and here we are. What do you think, just broadly, at a big picture level, of what this is going to mean for the people of Europe?
Well, from a strategic viewpoint, the pressures on the supplies are quite critical. We've been hearing about jet fuel running out in Europe in the next 6 weeks. That was reported a week or so ago. I wrote an article about 3 weeks ago on the potential for energy lockdowns. I think really, if you want to take it from a strategic viewpoint, it's this. When governments start trying to manage demand, it tells you everything, because it basically means if they're managing demand, it's because they're unsure about managing the supply. And that's going to affect things on a massive scale, not just in Europe, it's already impacting truckers and farmers in Australia, with food prices due to rise probably within the next 3 weeks by about 20 to 30%. Hard-pressed families are already feeling the struggle already. So when that happens, because farmers use so much diesel to get the crops to market, to harvest them, and then the trucks have to supply them, that is going to put critical pressure on those supply chains. And there are warnings now that there could be food shortages as well. Indeed, I went into the local supermarket there just a couple of days ago, and I started to see shelves that were starting to empty. Now, what people don't always realise is that the tins of beans and soups and other things that are canned products are usually from last year's harvest, which means it takes that length of time to get them out and developed and produced and into market and into the shops. What could happen is it will most likely put up food prices dramatically, but it could cause real shortages. But the following year, is when we might see it really escalating if they don't sort out this mess in the Straits of Hormuz and free up that international global shipping routes. The pressure's on. But from a globalist point of view, they're loving it because it gives them greater control. They will most likely start to introduce fear. Now, nothing at the moment is legal. It's not mandatory yet. But we saw what happened during the COVID era.
Right.
It started off with that easy to sell, safe and effective. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we don't see that happening, where there will be increased taxes, fines for people that go out in their cars. If they want to go to the seaside or even around the country, your neighbours are going to be picking up the phone and reporting you for it. That's just where it's going. And it's very, very deeply concerning.
Right. If you read this Financial Times article, it says these are recommendations. They're just incentivizing you to make your employees stay home
to flatten
once
the
a week,
curve.
or use renewables and things. It's just an incentive for now. But those of us who did live in Europe during the pandemic, remember, here's a crazy story. We were at in the little town Bruges. We were at a Christmas lights walk
In
Belgium, where you walk around the town and see the Christmas lights. And every half mile or so, we had to show our QR code that showed that we had a recent negative COVID test. And if we didn't, you cannot walk outside on this path to look at Christmas lights.
In the cold.
At night, outside, in the cold, we couldn't do it. We had to have recent negative COVID tests for an outdoor Christmas walk. These are the ways. And Europeans, they bend over for these kind of rules. Yes, sure, we'll do that. Here you go. The families were doing it. That's just the way it was.
Yep. And like everything else, though, you see where it's going, right? A new COVID 2.0. We've been talking about that. You don't even have to create a disease. You create a crisis. Well, there's definitely power shortages, right? It's going to be energy shutdowns, all done on purpose. See, this is all purposeful to bring in the new world order. A new normal. U.S.-Israeli war against Iran caused the biggest energy crisis in history. So there it is. It's not exaggerating anything. These are from articles. U.S.-Israeli aggression against Iran has halted maritime traffic in the Strait, which is a conduit for the fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas flows. It also come in the aftermath of the Russia-Ukraine war, which had already severed Russian gas supplies to Europe. So here, we'll play some of this.
U.S. Energy Secretary says Americans may not see gas prices fall until 2027 as the war with Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz continue to take a heavy toll on global energy supplies.
I expect it to stay 510 for a long time.
However, he expressed uncertainty
just where it's at right now.
The prices could drop below $3 a gallon this year. Energy prices have surged as the closure of the Strait of Hormuz have been rattling global markets. Brent and U.S. crude both jumped sharply in early trading, adding fresh pressure to fuel costs and inflation. Meanwhile, an NBC poll published on Sunday found that a wide majority of Americans say soaring gas prices have strained their financial livelihoods as they grow more pessimistic about Trump's handling of the economy in the country.
Yep, so there it is. Indeed. And like everything else, though, the time of revenge, payback, it's coming. The days of vengeance are at hand, as this video goes into. So here we go, Wisdom of Solomon.
Shalom. Call Allah, Yahweh Ba'ashim, Yahushai, Ba'ashim Kakadash. Double honors to Pastor Elder Great Millstone. Shalom to Hopeful Lick. This is Benji Call from the GMS Cleveland Camp. We're going to edifying lesson. It's going to be a quick in transit. He's going into, don't know exactly when we get the title, but he's going into ruling class mentality and how Ba'ashim Yahushai is getting ready to set us on top again. You know what I'm saying? These heathen have had their time to be on top, and they've used it to mock and insult, the nation of Israel. All right, because that was their time in the Lord's story. The Heavenly Father, Yahweh, for the word, and he calls God as his real name in ancient Hebrew, Yahweh. All right, he set up through his son Yahushua these different empires, and these heathens, they've always been hating, man. They've always just been hating as heathens, and they've been insulting and mocking and all this false slander upon the Lord's chosen people, man. I'm talking the so-called blacks and teal Native Americans, man, the Israelites, the 12 tribes, from Judah down to Issachar, man. Okay, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, Gad, Reuben, Asher, all right, all the tribes, all right. And they say that's just meditating on that fact, man. These motherfuckers is ultimate haters, man, and they ultimately hate because we're chosen and they're not, man. Let's say the time is coming, or we're finally this bullshit finally get put to rest, man. All right, so I was just again meditating on the mentality they have because a lot of our people. Israelites, you know what I'm saying, and they who reject their heritage, they mock about us being Israelites. They want to be, they just want to be beloved by these heathens. They want to be friends. They want to try to get on the heathens' good side. We said the hell with these heathens, man. We're better than them. We're superior to them. All right. So it's not a thing where these heathens talking shit. It's and we want to be friends with them. No, we want to punish them for their disrespect, man, for usurping our throne and getting out of order, man. This is ridiculous. These heathen talking all this shit against Jake, man. They always hate. Heathen always hate, literally from the beginning. All right, let me get this. This is Wisdom of Solomon 2:23. It says, "For the Most High created man to be immortal." The Israelite man, we're created to be immortal, and we will be immortal, man. All right, we're gonna be the superior beings. We already are, but it's gonna really show when we get the new bodies, Lord willing, man. All right, when Yahweh Shai, okay, when Yahweh comes back, all right, he is gonna tell you in 1 John, the 3rd chapter. Okay, when we shall see him, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is, man. We're gonna get that immortal God status, man. We're gonna use literally first thing on the agenda is enslaving and punishing these heathen, man. Getting revenge on the heathen. That's gonna be step number one. That's gonna be the first thing on the agenda. The spirit we was going into is not just last Saturday, 2 days ago, but the week prior we going into that. Killmonger was a hero, bro. Literally, that was the first in his agenda. When he got the throne, he got the power, and he got access to all that power and might and technology. First thing for his first agenda was gonna roll all the heathen. With Esau, Edom being number one. All right, that's exactly what we're gonna do. Okay. It says, "For the Most High created man to be immortal and made him to be an image of his own eternity." Right. So again, we're made in the image of Yahweh Shai. Nobody else is. Only the Israelite man. Okay. And like I said, the Lord's getting ready to bestow our superior God status back to the earth, man. We ain't gonna be on the bottom much longer, man. Like I said, that frustration, the irritation, okay, the patience we have to show. So okay, we really want to show, like I say, man, we're looking forward to getting that power, man, and get revenge on these heathen, man. All right. All these different shows, the TV series Invincible, you know what I'm saying, with the Viltrumites, all right, they going off, they got the mentality of might equals right, but nevertheless they have that superior, ruling class mentality, man. They know they're better than everybody else. They're saying us as Israelites, and the men of the Lord, we embody that. We know that. That's why everybody's so offended, because we know we're better than the heathen, man. As it's written, Deuteronomy 7:6, it's written all over the scriptures, man. Like it just read, he made us to be an image of his own eternity, not the heathen. The heathen are nobody, low light. 2 Ezra 6 chapter, right? And saying that they've been like it says in 2 Ezra 6 towards the bottom. The heathen now Lord over us, man. That's why they think they're better than us, man. Talking all this shit. But how about Shemir Shah? He gonna bring it into this very soon. He gonna show us and the whole world that we're his people, man. All right. He'll give us Israelite men the superiority in the earth, and no longer is anybody gonna be able to disrespect us, man. Everybody's gonna literally every time an Israelite man's gonna come around, everybody else is gonna bow down, man. Literally, they're gonna bow down. Anytime we come into the vicinity, man, everybody's gonna have to stop and acknowledge us. That's gonna be a beautiful, contrary experience to the experience we're living right now, man. With everybody's disrespecting Jake. Verse 24, nevertheless, through envy of the devil, envy of Esau, Edom, when he's a serpent, right, came death into the world, and they that do hold it aside do find it. You see, so that's how it's always been since then, all right? Since the beginning, the heathen always been fucking hating, man. It tells you the same thing in Ezekiel, tell you all the trees in the garden envied him, all right? It's talking about what? It's talking about how Adam in the beginning, all the rest of the heathen men, they envied Adam, man, because he was the chosen man, all right? He was on top. Slack you. It's like you. I'm like, and all the heathen they envious, man. I was in Ezekiel was like, is it 18 or something? I can look it up. I'll probably put it in the description of the comment board a little bit. All right, they say that the branches were not like his bones, man. Roughly paraphrasing. All right, we're better than them. That's why they always hate these heathen. They always got to remark all the heathen, but especially Esau the most, man, because he hates us the most. All right, this is let me get this. This is Isaiah 25:7. 8, Isaiah 25 and 8 in NLT, it says he will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away all tears. Right, again, like I just read, it was Solomon. We're going to be immortal. That was always the end goal for the Israelites to be immortal. Okay, that's why Lord says we read in Jeremiah as well as the New Testament, in the Hebrews 8th chapter, as well as in Deuteronomy. All right, Deuteronomy 30. It goes in Ezekiel, all over the scriptures, man. Okay, Isaiah, Lord said He's going to make us perfect. He was going to give us that new covenant. But it was really impossible for us to sin. Give us that perfect heart. And right now we have the hardened heart, the heart of flesh. Okay, we're going to have the perfect heart. It's really going to be impossible for us to break the laws. All right, the scripture say what? The wages of sin is death. So no sin equals no death. That's our own kryptonite. This is like, man, we're the real supermen of the earth. We're the real Viltrumites of the earth, man. All right, but what? We have a weakness, and our weakness is sin. When we disobey our power, right? Our God, right? How about Shemir Shah? So the Lord's going to take that away, so we're going to be 100% perfect, 100% righteous. It means we're going to be all powerful. Okay? So the Lord's going to wipe away death from forever. We ain't never going to die again. Literally, after Babylon the Great gets destroyed, our Lord Yahweh Shai comes back and we purge out the wicked Israelites. Okay? Hey, literally, ain't going to be no more death of Israelites ever again. All right? Like I said, Israelites, Yasharala, we real all that. All the Kryptonians, the Viltrumites, and all these different, all these different little Marvel, DC, all these little animated series where there's like a race of people, all the Saiyans, who are super powerful. That's really us, man. All right? And how about Shemir Shah? He's going to let us tap into our full potential very soon. It says the sovereign Lord will wipe away all tears. He will remove forever all insults and mockery against his land and people, Yahweh has spoken, so he's going to move forever all insults and mockery against his people, man. They said, we have faith, we believe this, man. The Lord's going to get rid of all the insults, the mockery. I said, all the different, man, the audacity, it's just like a straight hypocrisy, all audacity, these devils, man. You motherfucking devils, man, literally be talking about, got the nerve to talk about, yeah, black people rape and pillage and rob. I'm like, nigga, that's literally, like, even Jake saying, told him on Twitter, like, I didn't interact. I don't do that. I'm not trying to convince these heathens, man. Like, these might going to talk their shit, like I just read. They going to understand when we speak their language, man. Their language is what? Violence. That's the only thing these heathens understand. So when Shai gets back and he changes us, okay, and Shai leads us on that global conquest, okay, the global military campaign where we enslave all the heathen nations at once, all right? And that's when the heathen going to understand they fucked up, man, okay? I can tell you Isaiah, what's that, the 45th chapter, all right? We're talking about the surely our power is the God that hides thyself, all right? They're going to be shocked, like, man, I can't believe they was able to do this the whole time. I can't believe their God, it's like it. I can't believe their God is capable of delivering them like this and giving them his power this whole time. I can't believe this whole time they were the chosen and we were just mistreating them down here, man. We were fucked up, all right? You did right, you fucked up, all right? But it's like I said, Lord, when Yahweh Shemi Shai gives us that power, that's when the heathen going to stand and watch his fucking mouth, man. It's coming soon, all right? So we don't got that much longer, man. So with that, we give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh Shemi Shai, by Shem Kapidash, Double Arms, Apostles, Great Millstone. Like I say, it's a quick in transit, man. You know, Shalom wants a hopeful leg, man. Hey, Yahweh Shemi Shai, our God is coming. The Lord is this is all Heavenly Father Yahweh's divine plan, all right? We all humbling ourselves to his will, and we just trying to endure this bitter part of being in captivity. But very soon we're gonna be free, man. The Lord's gonna give us free. The scripture talk about Romans 8th chapter, the glorious liberty of the sons of the Most High, man. So how about Shemi Shai? He's gonna free us from this hell, man. The Lord knows that everything we suffered. He knows how tired we are. He knows how anxious we are for revenge, man. The Lord's gonna give us revenge very soon. So with that, call Lord, how about Shemi Shai? Shalom.
Yep, because that's what we need is revenge. Revenge for everything. To destroy everything that Esau has done, you know, and to totally make him the myth. And he's going to become the myth. Very shortly here, he's going to be a myth. They're going to say, is this the man that caused the kingdoms to tremble? Is this the man, you know, that would not set free his prisoners, right? And Donald J. Trump just happens to have his role in that because I believe he's going to be captured alive. He's also nicknamed Bunker Boy. You know, so he's actually going to be serving in those 1,000 years captivity because guaranteed he'll hide in his bunker as World War III, the nuclear part of it, happens. And we're going to dig his ass up. And they're going to be looking at this man, right? You know, because they'll remember him. You know, and he happens to serve the part of the king of Babylon, and everybody knows who this man is. Trump invokes Defense Production Act to sign energy-related directives. President Trump on the 20th of April invoked the Defense Production Act to issue a series of memorandums focused on strengthening coal supply chains, natural gas transmission, and liquefied natural gas capacity. So, like everything else, though, you know, everything's about, you know, war. You know, in fact, the main automakers are going to be making, you know, all the military equipment. Trump signed memos aimed at boosting domestic petroleum production, enhancing grid infrastructure, and expanding the deployment of large-scale energy and related infrastructure. You know, so like everything else, so the Defense Production Act is Cold War era legislation that grants the president authority to expand and expedite the supply of materials from the domestic industrial base for national security purposes. So like everything else, though, he's claiming to have a solution to everything, right? Which he's been the laughing stock of everything, so he's got to do something to fix all that, right? To clean that up and say, like, well, look at this, I did this. You know you ain't, man. You ain't done shit. You know, you're a joke. And he knows that. And, of course, like everything else, more terrorism in the Caribbean, right? The same thing they were doing before they took over Venezuela. U.S. boat strike kills 3 in the Caribbean. U.S. Southern Command said on Wednesday that its terrorists blew up the alleged drug boat, which we know is not a drug-running boat. They're just doing that to terrorize fishermen. They blew up a running boat in the Caribbean Seas as U.S. bombing campaign targets small vessels in the waters of Latin America continues. So, like everything else, though, you know, they just say, oh, you're a narco-terrorist, we're going to blow you up. You know, just like they did with Venezuela. A term employed by the Trump administration in an attempt to justify extraditional executions at sea. So, like everything else, though, you know, just say, they're narco-terrorists, you know. And Haig shit definitely took that a mile. Sam Altman's World ID expands biometric identity checks. So here we go. 18 million scanned arises in the company that has found its real business model, changing advertisers a premium for verified eyeballs. So there you go. You got to get onto the AI shit, you know. Biometric identity. So eventually, and this is happening in San Francisco. Why not? Why not in the fag capital, right? Initiative led by OpenAI CEO Altman introduces a standalone World ID app in a public beta on the 17th of April. The app separates identity management from the existing World Apple crypto wallet and is described as a tool to verify with platforms and services, manage your authenticators, store credentials, and control how your World ID is used. This approach extends biometric collection into more varied settings. Greater accessibility may encourage uptake, though it has also increased the number of environments where high sensitive biological data is captured. So, like everything else, though, they're really pushing this. Well, I don't know. Let's see here.
Exciting products coming as well. We're working with a company that will enable you to turn your piss, urine into gold. So stay tuned for more information about that.
Piss and gold.
Stay with us. Stay updated on InfoWars for more information as this.
I think it's about something else.
And now let's read what he said to the New York Times, Tim Heidecker and others involved in this, about how they're going to misrepresent who I am. Identity theft. Wearing my skin. Well, you guys just know this.
The Onion again.
It's like nuclear testing, waking up Godzilla. It's not going to go well. Just put it to you that way. And you're Tokyo. Politically, lovingly, not violently. The Onion plans to turn InfoWars, this is stealing my identity, into a comedy site with satirical echoes of the fringe conspiracy theories that Mr. Jones is known for. Tim, how do you say his name again? Heidecker, one of the comedians behind Tim and Eric's awesome show, Great Job, on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim, has been hired to serve as creative director of InfoWars. He said his initially plans to parody Mr. Jones' whole modus operandi, which means misrepresenting who I am. Mr. Heidecker has been working on his impressions of Mr. Jones, but eventually, when that joke gets old, Mr. Heidecker said he hopes to turn InfoWars into a destination for independent and experimental comedy. I just thought it would be just a beautiful joke if we could take this pretty toxic, negative, destructive force of InfoWars and rebrand it as this beautiful place for our creativity.
Well, you know why this is going on.
During a recent trip to Philadelphia, he traveled to Liberty Bell
for criticizing Trump.
Character as a new creative director of InfoWars. Yep, keep counting your chickens there, son. We're excited to lie constantly. This is what he says, implying it's me. We're excited to lie constantly for cold, hard cash, but this time in a cool way, and we'll make sure some of it gets back to the families. Oh, so they're going to make money off lies, claiming it's me lying, so it's okay if they do it. While broadcast programming is out of my lane, Mr. Maddie said, oh, they're dreaming of being TV producers. Satire and humor can be universal, and their programming can be of interest to Jones' former audience and help bring them out of the dark. That would be wonderful. Oh, they're going to deprogram you. Okay.
So, yeah, like everything else, so Trump has turned Jones over to the same people that wanted to take over it, but, you know, between Trump endorsing Trump and all that, you know, you know, so they, you know, in a way, he was able to help, you know, get Jones reinstated, etc., as he was running. Well, like everything else, well, now he's reversing all that. Why? Because he figures that he did Trump a favor, you know. So he's just just sending it back to the way it was before. Vital NLG chief warns on coming food price shock. We're on borrowed time. Every day that this trade remains closed and everyday production does not come back, we are building a problem for the future. We are building a problem that, as I said, will be transferred from one energy site into many different sectors, with food sector being very important one, Ecuador said. This is not sustainable or energy crisis. It will become a food crisis. Only gas can supply this feed for fertilizers. We are building the problem of the future. He added that even if Hormuz choke point reopened today, it could still take 3 to 5 months for undamaged LNG production to fully recover. Which, of course, they're talking about the fertilizer. You know, because people won't use horse shit. They totally rely on this fertilizer. But nonetheless, though, you know, this is definitely a power play, and they're going after Jones. And, you know, everything that was happening just right before Trump got reselected, it's all back, you know. So it's not Democrats doing it. This is Trump. This is Trump using, you know, the same comedians, you know, of Onion to take over, as this video goes into. So here it is. The Onion takes over Alex Jones is what's about to happen.
Well, it looks like today is the day that InfoWars officially turns into The Onion. Even though InfoWars gets a lot more views than The Onion. What's really going on here? Of course, this is from ongoing legal battles, as it looks like there's going to be a lot of changes after a 17-month legal ordeal that now will be taking what Alex Jones has built and using it in order to poke fun and attack him. Now, there's a lot of things here that are being done in absolutely just bad taste, to say the least here. The left is celebrating this, even though Alex is one of the biggest critics of the current status quo, the current establishment, of the current power structure in play right now. As, of course, one of the people taking over InfoWars just released a video. Some people are saying this is the guy that's got Sam Hyde fired. Alex Jones is responding here, as, of course, I think there's really no clear way to take Alex down. As, of course, we're also going to get into some important war updates as well, all here on this independent media broadcast. If you appreciate that, subscribe, click the notification button.
All right, so here it comes.
All the time you guys have with us here, as it's limited. As you can see, what happened to Alex Jones isn't just a separate incident, as there are multiple type of legal attacks on independent media. Sometimes they're warranted, sometimes they're not warranted, but it's pretty clear that independent media has taken over the corporate media. And there are major battles of influence that are going off right now. There's going to be a lot of censorship that's going to be, again, fast approaching. I've been in this political media landscape for like
bringing in a famine of the words,
right? You can see when the storm's coming. There's a big storm coming. That's why we keep reminding people, hey, sign up to lookonfilter.com. You want to sign up? I think it'll be good if you guys sign up for that. Because once the hammer comes down, and again, it could come down in many ways. It could come down with a lawsuit. Lots of independent media needs to hire security. I know a lot of friends that are dealing with just atrocious security costs now because of the threats. It's becoming more and more popular to attack streamers, and it's a landscape that's really becoming very uncomfortable, inconvenient, and expensive to exist in. Why? Because the competition wants to get rid of anything and anyone challenging them, and there has been the trailblazer of all of this, and that, of course, is Alex. Now, again, I don't always agree with Alex. We have our disagreements. We had a personal tiff and fight for like 10 years, but we didn't speak to each other. We kept it civil because I'm not a drama person, right? A lot of people just try to attack each other for drama nowadays, too, in this media landscape, and it's becoming more and more like Gary Springer, which is just a big old shame, right? We have a responsibility, we have a duty to try to help people, and all people are doing is like sometimes just attacking each other, which I find ridiculous. Now, again, the shape of alternative independent media, not that good. It's being internally self-destructed, it's being externally self-destructed, and there are major conglomerates coming in now, buying up major podcasts, and now Netflix has podcasts, Paramount's going to have podcasts, Paramount's buying all these other media companies, and everything's going to be under this big umbrella, where, of course, you have these major central avenues now that are going to essentially bring it back to the corporate media, where, just like the old days, we have 4 channels on TV. And that's exactly where we're going to, and independent media is going to be squeezed out, especially with artificial intelligence. We're being squeezed out, as we have to compete in the algorithms with literal people just animating fake stuff. So yeah, not good. So lookonfilter.com, have I told you about that? That's how you just keep us fully independent, keep us growing, keep us expanding. We don't have the big bucks. A lot of other people are taking Qatari dollars, BB dollars. I don't take any of that. I take dollars from you, and I mean, it means a lot to us. And I'm
so you see what's going on, though.
This just in. The Onion announces it has made a deal to acquire Infowars.com. The Onion has reached a deal. Huffington Post is reporting, Variety is reporting, as now they're going to be taking over his website. In the making of this video, it's still the regular website, and it looks like they just debuted a new logo that has, of course, the Pride colors and the Onion where the O was. It looks like Tim Heidecker will be the creative director here on all this, as Variety writes. Satire site The Onion says it has, after 17 months legal wrangling, successfully landed a deal, allowing it to take over InfoWars, the right-wing, quote-unquote, conspiracy-fueled site run by Alex Jones. Ben Collins, CEO of The Onion, confirmed to Variety details of the company's new plan to assume control of InfoWars under a deal with Gregory Milligan, who was appointed by a bankruptcy court to manage the InfoWars site. Under the terms of the agreement, The Onion's parent company, Global that he'd run would pay $81,000 per month to license the Infowars.com domain, name and associated intellectual property, including its name, as first reported by the New York Times. The deal would run for 6 months with an option to renew for another 6 months. The agreement must be approved by a judge before it takes effect. Now, will the judge approve this? There probably is going to be a bunch of motions that are going to counter this. And of course, they weren't the highest bidder. If you remember, they did a bidding process of who's going to buy Infowars. And there was a deal made, right, that a lot of people saw as underhanded, since The Onion didn't give the best deal. There was other people, like Roger Stone, who were working with individuals, other prominent individuals in the movement, that said, look, we'll give you a bid. We'll give, I think it was like 3 times as much as The Onion. And that bid was neglected because this is largely a humiliation ritual against Alex. This is about destroying his legacy, destroying his website, destroying everything that he has ever built and made and created. Right? Because again, if you're talking about, hey, we want financial competition, okay, Roger Stone says he'll buy it with a bunch of other people, and Roger Stone can run it. And Alex could still do what he does. But that's not what they want, right? They did a lower bid. It looks like one judge approved it. It's going to go to another judge. We're going to see what the other judge says. Now, before reporting on more of the details here and more of the kind of announcement by The Onion and Alex responding to it, we just really quickly wanted to tell you about We Are Chick.
So there we are. Like everything else, though, you know, once again, Infowars is gone. It was only back for that short period of time, you know, for a couple of years, right? You know, but now that's totally expired. And conveniently, because, yeah, he has actually criticized Trump in the recent war. So look for Alex on something else, you know. Russian envoy denounces U.S.-Israeli war against Iran from Tehran rebel. U.S. and Israeli state committed war crimes against Iran. Russian ambassador declared while inspecting the ruins of a hospital in the Iranian capital destroyed in the strikes. Diplomat made remarks to RT on Monday during a visit to the damaged residential areas alongside a group of foreign ambassadors. So like everything else, so here's some of the video here.
We're accompanying foreign diplomats and ambassadors on a field visit to the bomb sites in Tehran, including residential districts, as well as cultural and medical centers, which were damaged during the U.S.-Israeli attacks. Well, they're going to assess the extent and scope of destruction firsthand. Our first stop was Gonda Hospital, one of the medical facilities which came under U.S.-Israeli attacks during the war. Well, as you can see, there are signs of destructions all over the place. Windows were shattered, and actually the whole place, we are seeing structural damage. Well, according to officials, actually during the strikes, there was no prior warning, and patients and medical staff were inside this place and raising concerns about impact on civilian and medical infrastructures.
Well, I think it's a horrible thing to see, especially taking into consideration that it is a medical institution, hospital. I don't know how many victims or wounded were there, but I think there were, because we see clear destructions. This is evidence of the inhumane approach of Israel and the United States. I don't know who particularly delivered this blow against the hospital, but that is war crime.
But then again, it's all for fun,
also visited one of the most heavily affected residential areas in eastern Tehran, where entire buildings have been reduced to rubble. And as you can see, the scale of destruction stretches across the neighborhood, with many civilians, among them children and women, have been reported killed during the strikes.
We made arrangements so that our dear guests could come, see things up close, and actually convey the reality of the situation. The silence that we are witnessing today from Western countries, despite all international treaties and protocols which state that taking action against medical, educational, and civilian centers is considered a war crime, is unfortunate. We hope that, God willing, after the field visits conducted by the esteemed ambassadors and the entire civil society, this meaningful silence that has persisted so far will be broken, and a portion of the crimes committed by the Zionist regime in America will be shown to the world.
Of course, it is saddening. It is already pointless for us to even say that these attacks violate international law anymore. It has been over a month. It is approaching 2 months. We experienced this during the 12-day war as well. But we are seeing a much more grave situation here. Hospitals, residential neighborhoods, and homes have been attacked, and people have been massacred. There have been attacks on historical sites. This has no place in the laws of war. This needs to be stated clearly. The unjust attacks must be brought to an end as soon as possible.
So, like everything else, well, who's going to hold them accountable when the U.S. and the Israeli state run the fucking UN Security Council? They run everything, man. You can't do anything, right? So you see how much power the king of Babylon actually does have. So, yeah, they'll say, is this the man that caused the earth to tremble? I mean, I believe that wholeheartedly that they'll be looking at Donald Trump during that time period when they say, well, to this man, because he's a bunker boy, and I believe he's definitely part of the elite that's going to be a part of the 1,000 years to restore everything that he's destroyed. Why not? You know, the king of Babylon himself. Trump says he does not want to extend ceasefire with Iran. Well, that's a shit, because he said we're going to blow up the entire country and we're going to blow up more bridges and hospitals, he said, you know, spouting off. So now, you know, he plays around a lot with it. But meanwhile, Iranian commander says forces ready to give decisive response. Shipping traffic through Hormuz remains halted. Israeli's conduct in Lebanon totally unacceptable, says Belgium. You know, so like everything else, though, you know. Yeah, Trump demands Iran release these women as world tensely awaits second Pakistani talks. U.S. Navy boards another vessel. So, you know, they keep on, you know, messing with, you know, Iran. You know, look, you know, anybody's captured during the war on the Iranian side, they have every release. They have every right to, you know, hold them responsible for war crimes. Neither side wants to appear weak by flying to Pakistan first, without the other side already having clearly committed. Trump warns, expect bombs and urges Tehran release women said to be on death row. Okay, I'm not sure where that comes into play, but nonetheless, though. And Iran has informed Pakistan is sending a delegation, but still no sign or confirmation that the delegation is en route. So, you know, like everything else, you know, Trump, you know, and his fucking threats. No Iranian delegation in Islamabad, says reporters. Tehran rejects talks under threats. Yeah, you know, they're not somebody that can be bullied around. Contrary to numerous international regional media reports suggesting an Iranian delegation was set to arrive for talks, Arab news agency reported on Tuesday that to date, no delegation from Iran has gone to Islamabad. Neither a main nor a subsidiary delegation, neither primary nor secondary. So, pretty much so, no more talks. Talk is cheap. We're not getting suckered into this again. U.S. seeks Iran's surrender. Iranians don't submit to force. You know, so no. No, they're not going to give up. You know, they're not going to publicly be humiliated. Peskin made the remark in a post on his X account on Monday, as U.S. President Trump said American delegation was en route to Islamabad for talks with Iran after the renewed threat of attacking Iranian power plants and bridges if no deal is reached. In his post, Peskin stressed that honoring commitments was the basis of meaningful dialogue, which the U.S. honored none of them, but instead continues in their piracy, and the Israeli state keeps on going after Lebanon during the so-called ceasefire. Well, they did for a whole year, so why not, right? Israel's Lebanon occupation chokes Beirut's offshore gas options, so they totally cut off their supplies. Why? Because, duh, Greater Israel Project. The Zionist state's operation extended into the Lebanese territorial waters, believed to contain energy resources, so they just cut off their resources. They've pretty much cut off Beirut. On Sunday, Israeli Defense Forces published a map forward defense line area in southern Lebanon, effectively an occupation zone that some officials in West Jerusalem said needs to be depopulated for Israeli national security. This claim area extends into the sea, cutting off roughly 9-kilometer strip of Lebanese territorial waters. So, yep, there we go. Part of a straight en route, you know, for that Greater Israel Project. So, you can see where this all comes into play. And like everything else, so, you know, Professor Morandi was recently on, believe it or not, Gerald Celente, and so, to pretty much, respond to, Trump's touts that he's no more Mr. Nice Guy. There was nothing nice about fucking Donald Trump anyways, So we already know that it's a crock of shit. There was nothing nice. He was never a nice guy to them anyways, but rather a bully, right? But they've stood up to this bully, time and time again. Give me a minute here. So, NIV, Habakkuk chapter 2. See, the enemy is puffed up. His desires are not upright, but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness, right? Because we're going to be faithful unto death. Though, it's going to cost us our lives. A lot of us are going to lose our lives in this faith. Just being righteous and still, teaching against Esau Edom, teaching, our people, And, yeah, we're going to be put to death for that. Of course, he says we must reject these prophets of doom, so he's already declared who we are, as well as, the fact that, he's going after anybody who opposes him, right? Indeed, wine betrays him. He is arrogant and never at rest. Donald J. Trump is often, and I know I'm isolated to the king of Babylon, but, Esau, his desires are not upright, but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness, right? Indeed, the wine betrays him. He is arrogant and never at rest. Because he is greedy as the grave, and like death is never satisfied, he gathers to himself all the nations and takes captive all the peoples, just like what he's doing in Cuba, like he did to Venezuela. And he thinks he can do that to Iran, and it's not happening. Well, not all of them taunt him and ridicule and scorn, saying, woe to him who piles up stolen goods and makes himself wealthy by extortion. How long must this go on? And if you've been catching a lot of the Lego cartoon parodies from Iran and all that, they're really showing you what this king of Babylon's really alike, Because you have plundered many nations, the people who are left will plunder you. For you have shed human blood, and you have destroyed lands and cities and everyone in them. Just kind of like how it shows, growing up in Babylon video that they just did. That Iran just put out, raised in Babylon. Woe to him who builds his house by unjust gain, set his nest on high to escape the clutches of ruin. You have plotted the ruin of many people, shaming your own house and forfeiting your own life. The stones of the wall will cry out, and the beams of the woodwork will echo it. And pretty much so, he's being taken down, and shown, his shame has been shown worldwide. Woe to him that builds a city with bloodshed and establishes a town by injustice. And that's all that those videos show you, is how injustice, Esau is, including what he's done to our people. Iran's been showing that in their cartoon parodies again. Has not the Lord Almighty determined that the people's labor is only fuel for the fire, that the nations exhaust themselves for nothing? For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the power, as the waters cover the sea. And that is pretty much this word will go out, and it will not go out void. So, you're seeing it in real time. So hopefully this has been edifying. Got one more here before I close this out. Then I will say, Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rekakadash, Wal Abab Abal. Brakatum Jehofolek. Now on to Professor Marandi of Iran and his breakdown on what's going on in the war. Shalom.
Hello, my name is Edmund Marsh. I'm the executive editor of the Trench Journal. I'm happy to be here today. It's Sunday at 2:25 p.m. here in Los Angeles with Professor Mohammed Marandi. Professor, I wanted to get right into it. I think there's a lot of noise happening right now in the U.S. between who's negotiating, what Trump's posting. He's saying again that he will essentially destroy Iran. But I want to go back to Friday because I think what you posted was interesting. This is at a time on Friday when Trump was saying that Iran agreed to everything, the Strait of Hormuz was going to be opened, the Iranians would allow the U.S. to collect uranium inside the country. It seemed like Trump was trying to declare a complete victory. But you posted on X, and this is your quote, personally, I believe Trump is probably saying all of this nonsense about agreements with Iran so that he can later claim that Iran did not keep its promises that Iran never made. The chances of renewed murderous aggression from Trump and Netanyahu are high. Now, Professor, that was on Friday. Today's Sunday. When you look back on that post, is it more accurate or less accurate than you thought it would be?
I thought that this is basically how things would play out. And I think that we're probably going to see further tensions and the possibility, excuse me, and the possibility of war is quite high right now.
When you see Trump posting like he did earlier in the conflict, he talked about bombing the whole of Iran. When you read comments like that, is that a frustrated president, or is that a president who is very dangerous for Iran?
I think Trump is definitely a psychopath, and I think that he has no sense of morality. But I also think that by saying this, he unites Iranians further, and he creates a contempt for the United States, not just for Trump, across the world, because there's no blowback from the U.S. media, there's no pushback from politicians. You don't see any of the major public figures, whether journalists or politicians, speaking with outrage, saying that he is, you don't see it headlines in the New York Times or even in the Guardian in the UK or on CNN about the outrageous threats being made. This is a threat to create the greatest Holocaust in human history, and it's not the first time. He's been saying that he will obliterate Iran for quite a while now. He's said that he's going to take it back to the Stone Age, but we never saw any serious response. And that, I think, just shows the bankruptcy of the U.S. political class, the Epstein class, which has no moral compass, which has no sense of morality. They own the media, they own the government, and people across the world are seeing Trump speak like this, and no moral outrage, except for a senator here or a congressman there or a journalist here. But in general, the indifference and the quiet is quite stunning. And it's not new. I mean, we've seen, for example, the strangulation of Cuba, and it doesn't resonate among political elites in the United States. So I think what Trump is doing is he's single-handedly destroying the U.S. empire by making the United States seem increasingly like the Israeli regime, genocidal, barbaric, and medieval, to be very blunt.
There was an interview in Drop Site News from an unnamed Iranian official who said, if the U.S. resumes the war, Iran will hold nothing back and it won't negotiate for a very long time. Can you elaborate on that? What would Iran do if the ceasefire expires, the U.S. says that it's rearming? What happens? What can the world expect if the U.S. follows through on its threats and a war resumes?
Well, first of all, Iran is also rearming, and Iran is preparing as well. The only difference is that the global economy is moving closer and closer to crisis mode every day. The Iranians have not used its most advanced weapon systems. And I think this time around, Iran is not going to pull any punches. I think you and I spoke about this before. I'm not sure. I have spoken about it on social media, that the Iranians from the very beginning wanted a longer war, and the Americans wanted a shorter war. And I think after 10 days, the Americans started sending messages to Iran. And the Iranians, until I think day 34 or 36, they didn't even bother responding. And it was only when the Americans accepted the Iranian 10-point plan as the framework did Iran agree to negotiate. Even though the Americans are lying, I mean, the U.S. government is lying, and they're not faithful to anything that they say. But in any case, that was an important point. They began with Trump with saying unconditional surrender, and ultimately he accepted to have the Iranian 10-point plan as the framework. That symbolism is big. So now the Americans want to start phase 2 of this war, and I think there are two major problems. One is that the Americans made a catastrophic mistake by not beginning the war. The Iranians were expecting them to begin like we want to initiate it, to restart it now. In other words, a siege in the Indian Ocean, and to besiege the Iranian ports. Iran thought that was going to be what would happen a month and a half ago. That was, I think, a major mistake, because right now it's almost 2 months. It's closing in on 2 months that the Strait of Hormuz is almost completely closed. and the crisis is already building up. So the Americans who want to now put pressure on Iran, they're way behind the Iranians who've been putting enormous pressure on the United States for a very long time now. It's too late, far too late. The Iranians have already made a huge amount of money from their oil sales, and they can bring in lots of goods from Central Asia, from Russia, from China, from Pakistan, and other neighboring countries. So Iran will be able to get by without any great difficulty. But also this time around, Iran won't be pulling any punches. The Iranians have already destroyed American bases in the region. So they'll be going for more painful targets. And keep in mind, Edmund, that if the United States starts striking Iran's critical infrastructure, Iran will strike the critical infrastructure of the Israeli regime, but also the critical infrastructure of these 5 family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf. They are extremely vulnerable. The weather in the Persian Gulf is going to get very hot in about a month, and it will get hotter and hotter, and there will be 5-6 months of extremely warm temperature with high humidity. If the critical infrastructure in the Emirates, and Kuwait, and Qatar, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia are destroyed, not only will that create a permanent or very long-term crisis in the energy market and ensure a global depression, but these countries will collapse. People will not be able to live there. The spring weather is coming to an end. Remember, when the Americans invaded Kuwait and expelled Saddam Hussein, that was in early spring. They wanted to do it in good weather. When the Americans attacked to invaded Iraq again, it was much earlier than right now, because they wanted it done in good weather. Now, if they attack Iran, the weather will become hot very soon. But more importantly, they are the countries that are logistically supporting them, these 5 family dictatorships. If their critical infrastructure is destroyed, I think there will be an exodus of people from these countries towards Iraq and Jordan and elsewhere, maybe even Yemen. So these countries will cease to exist. They'll collapse. They won't be livable.
When the Iranians
uninhabitable,
the US,
a desert wilderness.
The power comes from Washington, or do they think that the power comes from Tel Aviv?
Well, in Islamabad, the Iranians did not have to contact Tehran even once. Before the trip, Dr. Ghalibaf spoke with Ayatollah Khamenei, and he traveled to Islamabad, and he carried out his negotiations. Vance made maybe a dozen phone calls, and one of those people who he was speaking with was the Israeli Prime Minister. The Israeli regime's Prime Minister later said that Vance reported to him, which I find extraordinary, that the Vice President of the United States has to report to a puny colony on the Mediterranean. But anyway, and he also said, Netanyahu, that many American leaders report to him every day. So, but it just shows that Vance did not have authority, and authority lies elsewhere. We can also see that in the fact that after the ceasefire was agreed upon, Netanyahu spoiled the ceasefire by carpet bombing Lebanon and slaughtering many hundreds of innocent people, and he stonewalled for 10 days before accepting the ceasefire. So even though the Americans agreed upon it, he stonewalled for 10 days, and what was the result? The Iranians did not open the Strait of Hormuz for extra trade from countries that Iran considers to be adversaries, meaning these family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf that are working with the Americans. So Netanyahu has created 10 extra days of global crisis. He prevented the peace talks from working, from having any success. So how are the Iranians supposed to decide or interpret who really is in charge? I think it's clear that the Zionist lobby has the upper hand. However, the fact that Netanyahu did have to accept the ceasefire after 10 days, one could interpret it as a sign that the Americans were pushing him because of the economic crisis that is looming. And maybe one could say that the Americans prioritized their own interests for once to get this ceasefire. But that too can be countered by the fact that when Iran, subsequent to the ceasefire in Lebanon, agreed to, in accordance with the ceasefire plan, to open up the Strait of Hormuz to more traffic, then Trump said he's going to keep the siege on Iranian ports in place. He didn't have to do that. He could have easily had an off-ramp and said, okay, now that we have a ceasefire, I'll end the siege, because that siege is a violation of the ceasefire. So now Trump has made the global economic crisis worse. Because Iran, subsequent to Trump's statement, said, okay, then we're not going to allow ships to leave. So it's very difficult to interpret the ceasefire and what really lies behind the ceasefire. I mean, who got the upper hand and for what reason when Trump made this, what I think was a foolish move, if he was indeed seeking an off-ramp. But then again, maybe Trump thought Iran would capitulate. I don't know what goes on in his head, but whatever it is, he is destroying the United States. He is getting Iran badly wrong. Iran is going to remain steadfast. Iran is prepared to go to war. If the United States initiates this second phase of the war, the Iranians will be all in, and they will pull no punches.
My last question, Professor, is what does Iran want as a result of the war? We all know they have their terms, their 10 points that they want, but is there a level, do you think, in Tehran that wants the United States to pay something of a penalty for even going to war to this level? Does Iran think that the U.S. and Israel suffered enough after launching this war? Is there an element that Iran is cognizant of potential future aggression, wanting to show that it has the capability to fight back? Or does it want immediate peace and would accept a ceasefire deal from Trump?
The Iranians don't like war, so don't misunderstand me. I mean, reviewers, I hope they don't misunderstand me. But the Iranians also want a longer war. They want this war to go on for a while because they want to make sure that this never happens again. And the only way to make it happen is to give Trump a very bloody nose. And so that's why in the first phase of the war, when the Americans started sending messages, the Iranians ignored those messages for almost 24, 26 days. Why? Because they just wanted the war to go on. And it was only after the United States accepted the Iranian 10-point plan as the framework for discussion that they decided to do the ceasefire. But even after the ceasefire, as soon as the Israelis began to violate it, Iran showed no mercy. They said, you violate the ceasefire, we're not going to let the strait be used. So Iran continued to be tough. And Iran is going to be tough in the days and weeks ahead. And as I said, they're not going to pull any punches if it becomes a hot one. If it becomes just a siege, well, the Iranians are going to impose their own siege. And I don't think that the Americans quite understand that the Iranians are going to be far more resilient than the Americans. Remember, there are two things here. One is that this is a fight for survival for Iran. This is a war for Netanyahu by the United States. And second is that Iranian religious culture, as Shia Muslims, they make them, their ideology makes them very resilient, very hostile towards oppression, very sympathetic towards the oppressed, and the struggle against oppressors is very central to their religious ideology and culture. So the Iran in the axis of resistance, the reason why they are so resilient is because of that component in their religious and cultural background. Something that the Americans just failed to comprehend, and the Americans constantly, I think, calculate based upon their own, their own worldview, and but also I think they misunderstood past Iranian actions as signs of weakness, whereas the Iranians simply wanted to keep the region stable. They did not want the world to blow up because Iran is the responsible actor. But then when the United States pushed too far, the Iranians said, okay, enough is enough, let's go to war. I think right now the Iranians are very much still in that state of mind.
Professor Mohammed Morandi will have your link to X below. We always appreciate you talking, Professor.
Thank you, Edmund, and let's hope and pray for better days for people across the world.